Welcome to Office Protect. This is the walkthrough video of the main feature and functionality of Office Protect. Hope you enjoy it. As you can see, we are currently on the dashboard page where you can see a summary of all the information about your tenant and its interaction with Office Protect. It includes some relevant information about your current status, news and updates about the software, a graphical view of your most recent events, a list of the most recent events themselves and their details, and how you're configured. We won't spend a whole lot of time on the dashboard page as it is mostly a summary of information that is found elsewhere in Office Protect. Let's move on to setting. The set page is the first place that most people would go to start their interaction with Office Protect. That is where you will have the ability to set best practice configuration for Office 365. As you begin your journey, you do not have a profile. Most people would choose from one of our default profiles that are here: low user impact, recommend best practice, or max security. Those were created by our expert as a way to sort of know where to get started. As you choose them, you have a short description and who are typically using those profiles. Low user impact is a good example. For example, this would be used for people that want to raise the security of their tenant but do not want to interfere with their usage of the software. As we know, security is a balance between convenience and safety, and this one errs towards the side of convenience. Most people will find more success with the recommended best practice profile or template as a starting point. For most users of Office Protect, the default templates will not be where they stop. You now have the ability to go down to the detail section and optimize this configuration. We recommend that you review each and every setting before you apply any changes. Changes to security configuration could be impacting, and you don't want to have any bad surprises. So most likely you would go through in each and every setting. In this section, you can see a number of information from left to right. It would be the name and description of the setting. The middle column here would be your current configuration in Office 365 itself as retrieved by Office Protect. And then on the right would be the choice that you desire. The green change tag will appear if there is a difference between this middle column, which is your current configuration at Office 365, and what you are looking to apply using Office Protect. The green tag is there so that you know at a quick glance what will actually change when you hit Save and Apply. In this particular video, I will not go through each and every setting. The point of Office Protect is to be simple and accessible, so by reading the title, short description, and longer description, you should have a very good idea of what the setting is, why we're suggesting that you apply it one way or the other. Once you have reviewed and possibly made change to the configuration that you want, you will most likely wind up on a custom profile. You have the ability to apply and save those custom profiles and reuse them later. Let me point out a couple of settings just to give you a sense of what is there in Office Protect. You can see it here on the screen. Give you a good example of something that is maybe not as well known is the fact that each and every user that uses Office 365 has the ability to interact using PowerShell with their mailbox. We found that for normal users, that is not a very common use case. The only time that it becomes a use case is if their account is hacked and the hacker or the malware itself is trying to interact in bulk with their mailbox. So generally, our recommended configuration will be to remove from non-admin accounts. As you can see, most settings will have a do not modify ignore setting. So if you have more specific or different configurations that are not directly supported by Office Protect, Office Protect will not interfere with them and you can simply leave them to do not modify. Once you have applied those changes, you will see the results in that middle column again. Another one that may be worth pointing out here in this video is the flag phishing emails using tenant domain or staff name, most commonly referred to as the CEO scam. Business email compromise is a giant problem right now. This is meant to help you and help your users identify emails that are coming from externally to the organization and yet are trying to pretend to be staff. So if any email comes in which the from space displays a name of one of the employee name, but the email is coming from externally to the organization, it will be flagged with the notification that is here. You can see the preview of what that gives as a result in the email by clicking the preview button. You also have the ability to edit this message. It is generally best practice to put the way to contact you or your team here in this box. Let's go ahead and apply the setting as I have reviewed them and I'm ready to move on. Office Protect detects that I have changed configuration from one of our default profile to move me into a custom profile. It is offering me to save it. I could simply apply it and stay on this generic custom profile, or I can save it for later reuse. Once I click apply change, you can see the screen here that will show the setting as they are being applied. To ensure that your configuration is exactly the way that you expect it, it will apply each and every setting every time. The settings are being applied with some parallelism, which should ensure that it doesn't take too long. At this point, there isn't much more to do than to wait for the completion of the operation. Once this is completed, you can go ahead and click close, and your current configuration will update itself to reflect the new changes. You can now see that I'm on my user created profile. Once you've completed the application of your setting and are happy with them, you can move on to monitoring. The second aspect of Office Protect, the major feature, is the 24/7 monitoring of the activity in Office 365. Office Protect is registered into your event logs, which will basically mean that it is parsing each and every event and looking for information. We have translated that information into something that can be easily comprehended, which transformed it into roughly 30 different events. The first thing to understand about our monitoring is it will provide you that information into one of two ways, either by sending it as an alert or including it in a weekly digest. The alert will be sent as soon as possible, and to manage expectation, what that would mean is that it takes roughly between, in typical cases, 20 to 30 minutes for Microsoft to include the event in their log, and we run on a regular basis. Less than an hour is a good way to understand how long it should take to get an alert. We have seen exceptions where the information is added a lot later than that, but those are really the exception. Alerts function in the same way as setting as far as the profiles, where we have default configurations that can be selected based on what you want. So recommended would include the alerts that we judge to be something that should be taken care of immediately, and puts information in the digest that we feel is relevant to day-to-day operation of an Office 365 tenant. As with the setting, you can go ahead and customize this information based on what you want to see as alerts and include it into your digest. As soon as you do that, you will now follow in a custom profile. Our events can be as simple as something that appears in your log. For example, account deleted is a good example. Once we see an account being deleted, we will let you know. It is an action that is often taken by hackers or vandals. Even internal threats could start deleting accounts, and that's something that you want to hear about. Administrator role change, for example, is also something that's very commonly done by people that have hacked one of the Office 365 services to give themselves access to more privileges. We can also trigger on things like shared files shared publicly through SharePoint or OneDrive. Office Protect is meant to help you control every service of Office 365. Some events are more complex than others as far as the treatment that is done by Office Protect. Sign in from authorized country is a good example where we will take the IP address of people that are logged in or logging into your Office 365 tenant and transform those into countries. And based off of a whitelist that is automatically configured for you here, we will alert you if somebody's logging in from a country that you're not expecting. The whitelist will be built automatically based on the configuration that is in your Office 365 tenant. So if your Office 365 tenant is configured for France for some reason, it will put France automatically as far as the whitelist. You always have the ability to go in and change that configuration. The concept of going in and tweaking what is monitored is very important to Office Protect. We have based our default configuration based on what we have heard from most of our users as far as what they're expecting, but chances are it is very likely that you'll want to tweak and make sure that you only get alerts for what you deem to be very important. Once you have done those manipulation and have changed some of the settings, you can go ahead and save your configuration, and you will have access to the exact same functionality of saving and applying that profile to other tenant. Once you have a custom profile and you modify it, any modification will be applied to each and every tenant that used that profile at your request. Some basic configuration here at the bottom where basically you have the ability to choose the destination for your alerts. It could be multiple people within your organization. It could also go to some kind of security system where you configure an email address to be sent directly to one of those systems, and it will allow you to manage your security through a single pane of glass. Same thing, once you're done, you can save those settings. One more element of the security that is controlled by Office Protect is the health status section. In that section, we have included configurations that are neither a simple setting or a point-in-time event. Things about your tenant that you should probably look into and make sure that you correct if they are not secure. You can see, for example, here, I have a global admin account that does not have an alternate email, which means that if it gets hijacked, it'll be very hard to recuperate. The account is actually listed here, so you can take very targeted action to fix this problem. Another example of a health status that exists in Office Protect is the mail forwarding rules to external domain. It is very common practice nowadays for a hacker to simply put in an exchange rule that will forward all of your emails to them. Once they have all that information, they can then take further action against your company. It is a big part, for example, of the business email compromise security issue, where they'll gather a ton of intelligence and then they will have all the tools to convince your account payable department of sending a wire to an external source. What we do here, and the reason that we verify it here, is we want to know if there are existing rules when you install Office Protect. We had a user that basically activated Office Protect only to realize that the tenant was already compromised and that there was already a rule sending emails, banking emails, to an external email address. One last aspect that I want to cover today about Office Protect is the reporting. So once you have all those configurations in place, they will trigger events and they will show up here in the reporting. If you turn off alerts and digest for an event, they will still show up in reports. So this gives you the ability to see what has been going on, even if you're not alerted every time. Obviously, the main control here is the date range. So once you have a date range that you like, you can update it and see every event that is triggered by Office Protect. Keep in mind, this is not the Office 365 audit logs. If you want to have that information, you just simply have to visit Office 365. This is the list of events from Office Protect, generated by Office Protect. As you can see, all the different events are included now here with simple information like when it happened, what was it, the longer description to give you more details and what was the source of that information. Once you have that here, you have the ability to filter column down. So if you want to know what are specific users, you might filter down by the specific user. Once you have a selection of event here, you can share them either by exporting them to CSV or sending them to yourself via email. Email is a good mean to share the information within your organization. One more point about the reporting. In the alerts themselves or right here from the interface, you can select any event and ignore it. What happens when you ignore an event is a specific configuration for the specific event will no longer trigger alerts. So take sign in from unauthorized country. It's a good example. Let's say you have one employee in China and you don't want to get alert every time they log in the morning, but at the same time, you don't want to add China to your list of authorized country. What you do is you take the first time you receive the alert and you simply go ignore. So this specific combination of event and its configuration, so the IP address, for example, here and the user, will not trigger alerts anymore. If you want to see the events anyway, they will still be here in the report section under ignored. You can go ahead and unignore them as well for the future. One last point of interest, the audit logs. Containing this audit logs is every single change performed by Office Protect. So if anybody comes to Office Protect and takes some actions to change configuration or what is monitored or what triggers alerts, it will show up here in our audit logs. It is a basic security feature and allows you to have the peace of mind to know who has made modifications. I want to thank you for your interest in Office Protect and have a nice day.